Good morning everyone, welcome to another repair video. Today is quite straightforward. As I mentioned in the title, I'm going to replace the HDMI port on this Xbox One S. So just a quick backstory on this. This is a limited edition Xbox One S. It's the Storm Grey edition, which I believe was originally bundled with Battlefield 1 and Gears of War 4 and Halo. I'm just going by what I found on the internet. I got this for £50 on eBay. It had a loose HDMI port. It was mentioned in the description. It actually works fine. I'll plug the power cable in there and the HDMI to the HDMI out port. Switch this on. You get the beep. If you just wait, yeah, it comes up fine. I haven't tested this in 4K. This is just a small TV that I use for testing. It's only 1080p. So even the HDMI port is very, very loose. When you wiggle it around, if you push it down far enough, the picture will cut out. Probably the plastic part that holds the pins is broken, but the pins themselves are what's holding it. So I'll just quickly switch over to the top camera. You'll be able to see more clearly what the problem is. Okay, so you can see that this has had quite a bit of abuse. If I flex this piece with the tweezers, it's very loose, and it's much worse when the cable itself is attached. If you compare it with this one, which is, I think this is the pass-through, this is much more loose. Now, this is not a diagnostics video. As I said, this port still actually works, but because this is wobbly, eventually the pins will break, so I'm going to replace this anyway. I also thought this might make a good video to explain the way that I do this job. There are lots of videos out there of this repair, and I don't claim my method is the best one. I just wanted to show you my way and hope this can help anyone who wants to give it a try. So I'm going to do this in the 3 steps. First, of course, I'm going to disassemble this, remove the board from the case and put it in a PCB holder ready for work. After that, I'll use the heat gun. I've got a quick 861DW, which I'll use to remove the port. Once it's removed, I'll do some cleanup and put the new one in. I'll use the solder iron to attach the new HDMI port. Once the new port is installed, I'll do a final check to make sure the ports are soldered properly. I'll wrap up the video and connect it to a TV and check that it's working. I will try to connect this to a 4K TV, which I have upstairs, just to verify that it can run in 4K, and that will be it. Okay, that's everything. I'm going to crack on and get this disassembled. Removing the X clamp, the way that I remove this X clamp, I use a very small screwdriver. I think this is about 2mm wide. Yeah, it's a 2mm screwdriver. This is the way that I remove the X clamp. Okay, this board is very dusty, so I can't film this, but I'm going to take this outside, just go over it with this brush. I'm also going to remove the thermal paste here has dried up, completely dried up. I'm going to remove that as well. This comes with some mobile phone repair kits. It's just like a plastic pry tool, but I'll use that with some isopropyl alcohol to remove the old thermal paste, which later, once the job is finished, I will replace that with fresh thermal paste. Okay, sorry I couldn't record that, but I just dusted that off with a brush outside, and I also cleaned off the dried up thermal paste. And I will apply some fresh thermal paste. I think I'm going to use this, the MX4, Arctic MX4. I've always used this in the past, it's very good. So I've got my WSP80 solder iron. I've got it set on the highest setting, 450 degrees. I'm going to use some Amtech flux, NC559 ASM. This is fake Amtech flux, I don't think it's the genuine thing. I'm just doing a bit of pre-soldering just to make it easier to remove the ports. Okay, that was a little bit of a disaster there. Unfortunately, two of these, I think it's 3 of these pads did get lifted. This might be because I used the medium nozzle, but I have used the medium nozzle before without lifting the pads. Most of the time this doesn't happen, but I think it's good to show you that sometimes this might happen. Luckily, I don't think these have been detached completely. I'll have to check that later with the multimeter. As I said, these two are not quite separated. They need to be separated. I'm going to try to use some very fine tweezers. I will use the heat gun to remove the solder from these holes so I can pre-install the port. I've got this on 90 airflow. Okay, usually I would pre-tin these pads before I solder them, but I'm really worried about breaking these off, so I want to try to put the port in first and get them over the pads and then solder it from there. And hopefully, if I keep the temperature down on the solder iron, I'll set the temperature to 400, these pads shouldn't break off. I'm just going to pre-tin the new HDMI port before I set that down. Sorry about that, I put a little bit too much. Sorry about that, but it was getting very awkward because of the camera angle, and you know, I have a magnifier which I'm using at the same time. I'll try and explain what happened. This is just the donor board. Try to show you and explain what went wrong. So what I didn't realise is I didn't see it at the time. I was wondering why there was a big gap there. One of the pads came off, I believe is pin 6. It's not on this board, I'm just showing you the reference. Pin 6 from my right, which will be your left, is not actually connected to anything. It's not even grounded. I'm not so worried about that. However, pin 7 did eventually get broken off. I will have to create a new line for that. Pin 6 is not connected to anything. I can leave this pin stray and it shouldn't cause any. Pin 7 here, which is connected to this trace here, if it's just pin 7 that's broken, I should be able to manage okay. I'm going to go along and push each of these pins just to make sure that they are connected. I've got the multimeter in continuity mode, and I'm just going to check between each of the adjacent pins to make sure that there are no shorts. So I think that's okay. I think the other pins are soldered properly. I will double check that later. What I'm going to do now, I will solder a repair line to pin 7. I just took some very thin link wire that I used to reconnect pin 7. This is Chemtronics CW2500, it's just a 2-part epoxy. I'm only going to need a very tiny bit of this. In the instructions it says if you heat this for 10 minutes at 100 degrees that will help to cure it. I think it takes maybe 24 hours or 48 hours to cure. Okay, that's been about 10 minutes now. because I dislodged some of these, I want to make sure all of these pins and pads are connected. I don't think I'll need to check those last 5 pins there. Okay, sorry, I'll just briefly sum up what I did then. So with the solder iron only, I soldered the 4 ground pins on both sides. I heated the port up itself with the solder iron and then just touched the solder to the pins on the other side, and I added a bit of solder on this side. Just one side at a time. I used the heat gun on 450 degrees at 90 airflow. Just one side at a time. These 2 pins first, to make sure the solder really soaked through, and then I did the other side. I have this HDMI breakout connector just to confirm that all the pins are connected properly. That's just the final confirmation. That's pretty much everything. Once I've removed all the dust, I'll put everything back together and do the final check with the 4K TV to make sure everything's working properly. Okay, so I've got everything reassembled. I've put everything back together except for the outer casing and the top cover. I'm really sorry. I said in the beginning that this is going to be a very straightforward and quick video, but I didn't anticipate making the mistake by damaging the pads. That was my fault. You should never keep agitating it or moving it around with the tweezers the way I was doing. But anyway, everything's done now. I've cleaned everything up, so I'm just gonna, I said I was going to confirm that it works with the 4K TV. Okay, and everything is working fine. Okay, I'm in settings and then TV and display options. Resolution 4K Ultra HD. Keep this resolution, keep. We've got it set at 4K. Everything seems to be fine. That's the end of the video. So this is running in 4K now. I hope you found this video useful. I'm sorry it was a little bit longer than I originally planned. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.